It's Friday the 2nd of December. This is the Climate Alarm Clock. This week's headlines: Citizens' Assembly on Biodiversity makes radical recommendations, and it turns out there's a lot more going on in nature than we knew. ESRI study finds that young people want radical climate action. Hello and welcome to the Climate Alarm Clock, your weekly Irish climate news podcast. I'm Dara Wynne, and thankfully we're moving away from our COP discussion this week, and we're going to be talking about, I think for the most part, some pretty positive climate stories. I'm joined today, as always, by Anna Pringle. Anna, how are you keeping?
Hiya, Dara. I can't believe it's December.
I know. And delighted that Ciara Daly is back with us this week as well. Ciara, how are you?
Woohoo!
Oh, hey, feeling ready to talk about the climate.
And we are thrilled today to be joined by author, comedian, broadcaster, rubbish picker, and lots of other things, Colm O'Regan. Colm's latest book is called Climate Warrior, A Hypocrite's Guide to Saving the Planet, where he discusses his own climate action journey and gives people some ideas of what they can do themselves. Colm, welcome back to the Climate Alarm Clock.
Great to be back. I think the last time, or indeed the first time I was on the podcast, I was probably talking about the book in the abstract sense and maybe like a comedy show, so it's just really nice to have this tangible, albeit made of paper, presumably from sustainably grown forests. I haven't checked. Actual book. So yeah, you've been with me on my book journey.
Yeah, and the book, I've had a read of the book, and it is great. I think wherever people are on their climate journey, there's loads of things to identify with. There's loads of laugh out loud moments, and also a few bits that I would really disagree with, and then you kind of other side it, and I'm like, okay, you were just being considerate of all people. I guess that's all right, which is lovely. So, Colm, I suppose before we get into our news roundup, we're trying to ask all our guests a little bit about their own climate journeys, and this is something you maybe would have mentioned in our last chat, but getting involved in climate action, was it a sort of gradual experience for you, or was there a big moment where you decided, right, this is something for me to get on board with?
I think in economist speak, my journey has been lumpy, and it kind of changed over time. I remember in the 80s being hugely, the awakenings, like Chernobyl was an environmental thing. I was 8 when Chernobyl happened, so you become aware of bad things that can happen. I remember the phrase acid rain seeping through. So as far as I was concerned, growing up as a child, you had Chernobyl was a problem, acid rain was a thing, animals, bad guys chasing animals was a thing, the Amazon rainforest disappearing, the 1987 Time magazine cover, I think, Endangered Earth, the one with the globe covered in chains, quite an iconic thing. Hole in the ozone layer, all kind of possibly discrete, individual things that you could fix or solve or deal with or worry about in isolation. And then maybe a bit about polar ice caps melting, late 80s, early 90s. Awareness of it, a young child with the news. So it's very, like, if you talk to me at age 12, I was worried about the forests or, that kind of thing. And
yeah, and I think probably having, having seen the Chernobyl thing and gotten through that, the ozone layer was fixed, you kind of assume people have, someone has it under control.
Yes, exactly.
Was there for you, this isn't under control? Was there a realization of that for you?
Probably just a creeping consumption of news then through the 2010s, and it sounds cliched, but definitely having children does make a difference, because you think about, you naturally start to project forward once you get out of like infanthood, and they're still there, right? So let's start thinking about the rest of their lives, kind of thing.
And then you get to their mid-20s and they're still there.
They're still there, yeah.
Or if you're my mum and dad, she's still here.
Yeah, she's still here, yeah. Well, ours going to move out at 18. They're going to have to send them off to 4 years Erasmus.
Good luck with that.
But it started the idea of thinking, projecting forward into what kind of, like, the concept that their experience would be possibly a worse planet or a tougher life than I had, which is not the run of things. And a creeping realization that this might be the first set of generations where they will have it tougher. And not just like before, that used to be in the abstract sense of the national debt our grandchildren will have to bear is X. And you're like, fine, that'll knock a few corners off them. Nothing like a bit of debt to put a stop to your gallop. But quality of air or water or the weather as a thing that they'll have to endure.
Or availability of food.
Availability of food or strife and all this kind of thing. So there's a bit of that. And then maybe crystallise a little bit at the Climate March in 2019, September 2019, where we went in. Sort of, you know, I'd say maybe for a lot of people like me, going into that Climate March you've sort of felt drawn osmotically to it because a lot of other people were going, and the sense that we can't have teenagers doing our protesting for us. That's ridiculous. Like, the people who should have, you know, they should be idealistic, but also they should be thinking about drinking cans in a graveyard. Like, that's what you should have. Like, children should have.
That's our culture.
Yeah, children should have angst. Teenagers should have angst. That's essential part of teenagerhood. But it should be about, my life is over and nobody understands me, not
metaphorically, not
literally. You know, like it should, I can't wait to go to college. Everybody in my class is a moron and my parents are stupid. Like, that's the angst you should have. The angst as you've grown in such a weird way that none of your limbs match each other, you know, and your skin is erupting. That's the angst, not fundamental existential planetary one. So a sense of, and also, like, you're at what age do you start actually being an adult? You know, 40 something, you're kind of going, the grown-ups will sort this. I'm fucking grown up now. Like, literally age 40 and upwards have all, you know, most of them most of them / us have houses. You know, we're wasting our time standing on the side of a GAA pitch, but we're not wasting our time worrying about, you know, most have relationships sort of sorted and, you know, roughly enough income to deal with the basic needs. So who else is going to do it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so, Colm, then the other question we're asking all our guests, and I'd be interested because you obviously have been aware of environmental stuff before climate stuff in some sense. Is there a particular term that you use to describe all this? Do you call it climate change or the environmental crisis, or is there any particular term that you use, and why?
I don't know. I mean, it starts to devolve into like the whole climate thing, because I'm constantly like checking myself for. I know I'm on, the name of the podcast is The Climate Alarm, but alarmism as, like, you only get a couple of shots at alarmism, you know? It's kind of like if I'm doing a gig where the crowd is noisy, I only get a couple of shots at telling them to shush, because then it becomes like teacher-student relationship, you know? So I don't use the word crisis that much, you know? It's more, because it's too... You can't have... there is permanent crisis, but people can't exist in a state of permanent crisis, because people exist in like lots of different levels of what their current issue is. So, I mean, the problem is the word climate is, like, I've put it on my book, and that's not going to help sales.
Too,
yeah, it's not good. But I think you'd want it to become like IT, the way IT used to be computers and a department. And eventually the word climate has to be part of the lexicon, and it can't switch people off. You know, the world is full of people who said, "Oh, I'm sick of hearing about IT," and now they've all got children working in IT. You know, it's definitely emphasizing the climate, and maybe it's the climate thing. Again, as I say, crisis sometimes, but the climate thing, I think.
Okay,
that climate
Great.
thing.
And that kind of brings us to our first news story, because encompassed in the climate thing is biodiversity. And we had some, I think, largely positive news on the biodiversity front this year, with kind of the conclusion of the Biodiversity Assembly. It officially finished on Sunday, but they didn't get to vote on all the recommendations, so they'll be reconvening in the new year. But they did make some of their sort of headline recommendations. And the key recommendation that came out of it, or the headline story, is that 83% are in favour of a referendum on nature in the Constitution. So to enshrine Irish people's rights to a healthy environment, first of all, but then also to actually give rights to nature, which will be a fundamental shift in the way we deal and treat nature in the country. So we'll get into explaining what a biodiversity or what the Citizens' Assembly is in a little minute. But Anna or Ciara or Colm, any sort of initial reactions to that headline recommendation?
Well, I mean, my initial reaction to it was the same as my reaction to previous citizens' assemblies, which is to think that the citizens of Ireland are amazing when they are presented with information and have time to think about it and discuss it in a deliberate, thoughtful way. They always come out with the right answers, which I think is amazing. Or maybe it's just because I agree with them, but I just do think that the process tends to generate some really hopeful results.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Anna on that one for once. It's really, really nice to hear people, because the Citizens' Assembly is made up of everyday people like all of us. It's not people who know all the facts or have leaning one way or the other. So it just kind of fills you with a little bit of hope and optimism, something we don't get a lot of in this podcast. So I suppose to say what the Citizens' Assembly is, it's Ireland are kind of one of the world leaders on this. It's where 100 people are randomly selected to represent the population of Ireland. So it's sort of it's sort of stratified sampling, so that people come from every county. It's a balance of ages and genders and socioeconomic class. They pick difficult issues to deal with, and then get to meet and hear from loads of experts about the topic, and then make recommendations that are presented to the government. So in the past, there was a referendum, or there was a Citizens' Assembly on the 8th Amendment, which sort of was a part of what led to the referendum on the 8th Amendment. There was an assembly on climate change back in 2017, and the recommendations there were radical. So it's this really lovely part of it's sort of democracy, sort of shows what democracy could be almost. It's a great process, and as I said, the recommendations coming out of this are really positive and really radical. So that's a little summary of what Citizens' Assembly do.
I think what's brilliant about it is it's necessary for something like this, for 100 people in a room, which in theory sounds chaotic, like a 100-person meeting. But obviously what it is, it's kind of organised chaos, or an organised dynamic conversation, because everything is so complex. And for me, if we learn one lesson per month or whatever about all of this, is to just be comfortable with complexity of everything. Like I'll give you a small example. Like I follow somebody on Twitter who's knows stuff about soil, and he's talking about because I feel good about composting and all that kind of thing, and he's talking about when you bring in tea leaves into compost, and it's it bears no resemblance to the soil on your allotment and the microbes that are there, and the microbes you're bringing in just simply won't survive, and all this kind of thing. And I don't mind. An older version of me would just go, F the composting anyway, I'm just going to throw everything into the black bin. But just being okay with nuance and complexity and a little bit of disappointment when you're wrong, and get over that. Because what we have in Parliament, in the Dáil, is people protecting their positions, because if they're perceived to be wrong, it allows a chink in the armour. And I haven't been at a Citizens' Assembly, but the simple fact that there's no splits or walkouts doesn't mean that it's groupthink. It just means that it would appear that people seem to be roughly okay with complexity and nuance. And even if no referendum came out of it, the idea that people were reading about what they were looking for and enshrining the rights of nature and giving nature rights is so it's so fundamentally obvious, but also so fundamentally nobody's really does much thinking about it, which is weird because we give companies rights
Yes.
and they don't exist.
Yeah.
Like they're not a thing.
They're social
It's
entities.
literally a PO box in the IFSC,
Yeah.
but not giving the air that we breathe or the water rights. And like I feel like a Rubicon will be crossed where people stop going, oh, tree huggers. The very fact that this gets, that even if it's not enshrined in the Constitution, but that the idea of nature as having rights is enshrined in the vernacular
Yeah.
and in the
I mean,
in
that's
the
quite
discussion.
radical.
Yeah.
Oh,
Unfortunately, in Ireland, that is quite radical because it's not something that we have a consciousness of. And a part of me did look at that and go, and you can call me cynical, but I said, "Oh, I bet the IFA are already getting their talking points together about this one because they will see it as a threat to farming."
Yeah, I think there's loads that's been touched on there that I now want to talk about. First of all, I think the thing you said, Colm, about acknowledging the complexity and being aware of being on a journey, and that was one thing that I really liked in your book, is that, you know, it's quite clear that you get a lot out of your own climate journey, and I think that's something that everyone that's involved in it, you do. It's not this thing that, oh, I have to do this. It's something that I want to do, and I think that's something really good to get across.
And we're always looking for transformation. You know, it's not. This stuff isn't transformative. Like, you see this thing, this book will change your life. Really? How the hell could one, like you need to read more than one book.
Yeah.
You know, if this book changes your life, then it's a cult. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then the other thing that you said there was about, you know, how the Citizens' Assembly being this open thing where people make it discuss it and are open to change, and the contrast to that in the Dáil. And that kind of really resonates with one of the recommendations that the Assembly agreed to, which was that the Assembly believes that the state has comprehensively failed to adequately fund, implement and enforce existing national legislation, national policies, EU biodiversity related laws and directives related to biodiversity. This must change. And it's great to hear that, but also, why did it take getting those 100 people in a room for this to come out? You know, why have those politicians in the Dáil been allowed to deflect? Why have people been able to say, oh, that's not black and white, you know, we're not, you know. So it's brilliant that this has come out of the Citizens' Assembly, but also, you know, I think it makes me quite sad that it took a Citizens' Assembly to, you know, for me to now have something to point to say, yeah, look, they have failed. They are failing, and I think that's a positive and a negative of the of the whole thing.
Well, I think it's a lovely reminder that when you just get people in a room and they have a space to have a conversation, we don't all have to be combative, and you actually can have your faith restored in humanity.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so I suppose then sort of in terms of actually two little things in terms of sort of where this assembly came from, you can actually trace it all the way back to the school strikes and the Extinction Rebellion strikes in March 2019 when they started. So I think the really big ones were in September, but in March, that's when sort of Greta was on the scene a few months. There was protests in Ireland. In May 2019, Ireland declared a climate and biodiversity emergency in the Dáil, which was just them kind of saying, yeah, it's an emergency. Didn't really do anything.
There, did that. We're done.
But at the same time, they passed the Joint Oireachtas Committee report on climate, and they promised to set up a Citizens' Assembly on biodiversity. That was in May 2019. Fast forward to the Assembly, they've made this recommendation, and we now might get constitutional change on nature. And you can trace that all the way back to those young people and activists out on the street. And I think that is a lovely little thing to take from it all.
How can we keep an eye on whether that change is going to come or that legislation is going to come?
So then I think that's the other really nice thing, is that now there's this lovely a lovely thing that you can contact your politicians about and say, look, these 100 people heard from experts. This is what they want. They said it's urgent. What are you going to do about it? So it's now, I think, as you kind of say, Colm, it's now this great talking point. It's this thing that's out in the open we can all talk about, but it's also for people who are in that kind of activist state of mind, it is now something to get behind and push for and advocate for. And I think that is really exciting.
Yeah. But can I ask a question about, it's really valuable that you talk about the look back and trace the genesis of a moment, right? And you go back to earlier climate strikes and promises and that kind of thing. And that process will be 3 years, say. And it's, 3 years is a long time and how much we have left and all that. But if we in 2019 said we have X amount of years left, we don't have time for a iterative process to do this, then we'd probably end up with, we need to do something now, and then nothing will be done in the 2019 now, and we'd be here, still nothing done. I guess what I'm saying is that one of the problems, I think, for people's engagement is the idea that we have 8 years left to do something, and people are going, well, that doesn't sound like enough time, so I'll probably just go do nothing. Yeah. Whereas this stuff takes time.
And starting something today.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is that if you start something today that might not come to fruition for 5 years or 10 years, it's still worth starting it.
Better. Yeah, we're not going off a cliff in 2030. There'll be lots of planet left to do things with. And I know it was necessary to give us the wake-up call, to give us those deadlines, but I did find it demotivating. I did not find 8-year deadlines motivating, if you know what I mean. I find, I'm sorry, I'm not criticising, I'm just saying it's just something we need to acknowledge, that there's 2 tracks of time. There's like, fucking do something now, and then there's, well, we need to get a thing up and running, and before we can do that, we need the heads of the bill published, and
slow, laborious process.
It has to be done right, so it can't be challenged in the Supreme Court by some lula who's in theory acting the maggot, but in a way their challenge will do us a favour in 2040 to prevent against some other fascism.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but to your point, sorry, Dara, to your point earlier, Colm, we need people who can write emails and do different things. We need people who can do the nitty-gritty writing laws and policy, which is not something that comes natural to all of us, certainly not to me.
Yeah.
And thinking through that detail, and that is a slower process, and but we also still need the people who are willing to, like the Just Stop Oil activists, who are willing to like keep pushing and pushing for immediate action. So I think it has to happen at all levels of society.
Yeah, I agree, Anna, that we need everyone doing everything, and we need the people doing the stuff slowly, but we do need people bringing the urgency, trying to get our governments and organisations to treat it like an emergency. Because we saw with COVID, when things are treated as an emergency, we can actually get much, much faster change. So we do need that. And I think what we really need is to not have the infighting, is to not, because that happens so much. Especially look at the Green Party. They're going too slow. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. And it's like, they're not maybe doing as much as they should do as fast as they did. But Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and Sinn Féin are doing nothing. So can we all be angry with them together instead of like giving out about the pace that all the people who actually care are going at? And I think that's the big thing, is that, if you're I'm going to go slowly, look at the people going fast and say, they're right. Maybe I do need to figure out how fast I can go. And if you're one of the people going fast, look at the people who are actually doing stuff and saying, well, if I don't end up overthrowing society and turning the whole world into a socialist utopia, then at least these people are taking little steps along the way. And I think
there's a lot of people sitting on the couch complaining that their dinner is late and not helping the person making the dinner.
Exactly. But I think
just before we leave the biodiversity, there was a lovely story this week about scientists who are science that is making it possible to hear nature. And it turns out that they've got these new, and I know our Rob, our sound engineer, would love this story, because there's new digital microphones that they've placed them all over Earth and even in the ocean and whatever. And what they're finding is that there is a lot of what they're saying, non-humans are in continuous conversation, and which we can't hear with our naked ear. And it's just such an amazing story. And so they're finding that just the level of communication between different species and among species is way more than we had ever known before. So there's just all this talking going on around us. And so it's, and that's biodiversity at its core, really.
And I think, Anna, that like it is one thing in trying to tackle all this stuff is that nature is amazing. Like nature is absolutely amazing, and it can bring you so much joy. It can bring you such a sense of belonging and peace. And while we know that in 50 years' time the climate is going to be in a worse state, no matter what we do, because of locked-in warming and stuff, biodiversity in Ireland could actually be in a better place in 10 years' time, or 20 years' time, or 30 years' time. And so that's really lovely that,
But it's also, though, just shows you, coming back again to the word complexity, we just don't understand the complexity of the biosphere and the planet that we've got around us. And so one lovely example from this research was sea turtles. You know the way turtles, they lay their eggs on the beach and they go off and the eggs hatch and, try to make it to the sea. It turns out that the mother turtle hangs out nearby emitting sounds to attract the baby turtles, and the baby turtles are making sounds from within the eggs. Wow. So that it's not a coincidence that they all hatch at the same time. They're talking to each other.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the mommy is there going, come on. What?
Is there anywhere we can go and listen to these sounds, Anna?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know how they are translated.
New segment on the climate alarm clock.
That's a really
great to the inside of a turtle.
That's a great idea. Wouldn't you love to
guess the animal and have a little prize?
Yeah.
The prize is a turtle. No, the prize isn't a turtle. No, it's not a pet turtle.
You can bring home your own sea turtle.
If you guess what the animal is, you get it.
And it's not just animals, it's plants as well.
Yeah,
so,
I find the one thing that's hopefully changed for the better is people's expectation of what nature is and how the smallest, tiniest, ugliest, in inverted commas, or what looks like, because we just... it's not all cheetahs, crocodiles and water buffalo in some sort of Royal Rumble in the Serengeti. It's like, there's a joy in, and I know it's a smartphone and a lithium mine somewhere and all that, but I love just in the last couple of years, looking at plants and getting the names of them. That sense of, and it's not mastery, but a sense of connection with plants or insects or little bird song app.
Yeah.
And I've only found bloody it's always sparrows or starlings, but still they used to be birds.
Yeah.
And now they've birds with names, or they used to be weeds and now they're weeds with names. And
we could chat about birds.
Chat about
all
birds,
day.
Dara's favourite topic.
Yeah.
But we will move on instead to young people. And I think this is once again a good news story, an ESRI report that came out on young people's attitudes to climate. Anna.
Yeah, and kind of actually following on from what we were just talking about, it turns out that young people are more focused on the environment, and they do want to behave in a way that's pro-environment. Now, the interesting thing about this is while there is a lot of positive attitudes, in some cases the knowledge doesn't go with it. So, for example, 92% of young people recycle, and they see that as really beneficial for the environment. But unfortunately, they think that's one of the highest impact behaviours that they can engage in. But, as well, 2/3 think public transport is important. Half of young people say that they primarily travel by public transport or active travel. Interestingly, and not surprisingly, especially if you're in Dublin, males are 75% more likely to cycle or walk than females. That's not surprising at all. And people living in urban areas are twice as likely to use public transport or cycle or walk. Again, not surprising because you'll hear rural Ireland saying we don't have public transport. But so there's a lot of really good points that are coming out from this.
There's loads to pick out, loads to tease out there. Yeah, one there that I see that you've posted in, and it is 48% of those who currently eat meat intend to eat less in the short-term future.
Yeah,
with almost 30% planning to eat a plant-based diet in the long term. Which that's you wouldn't get that from the general discourse that goes on around diet in Ireland. That's amazing.
You wouldn't. But at the same time, only 1 in 3 recognise that eating a plant-based diet is a high impact behaviour.
Yeah.
So,
which, as you say, it comes down to the knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, and like less than half are aware that avoiding long haul flights is a high impact behaviour.
So you guys, who are the ESRI and what are they going to do with this information about us young people? Myself,
Ciara, always keeping us honest. It's
the Economic Social Research Institute. So it's the government body that does research into people's attitudes, behaviours, various different things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just but like, is anybody going to be listening to this information?
Oh, they're very credible.
But is your questions, Ciara, sort of like what's going to happen from here? It's been obviously it's published, so it's publicly available for anyone to do stuff. So maybe there'll be more research out of it in universities. Hopefully, the government will sort of incorporate it into their own climate plans and use it to tailor messaging, that kind of thing, to have more effective action. And maybe possibly to ramp up ambition. I think one thing for me is, it's really interesting 15 or 16 to 24-year-olds that, I think I was more idealistic at that age than I am now. And sort of can you turn those attitudes into behaviours as you grow up,
as life gets in the way.
Yeah, like, is society ready for that, for all these people that want to use public transport more, or for these people that want to change their diet? And if it comes to a point where people are like, I have to choose between getting a job and buying a house or sticking to these values, then what happens, and that's what I think would be interesting if this was a longitudinal study, and follow this cohort through and then also survey young people. But I think it really shows people want to make these changes and are we ready to enable them.
But if you look at 23, 24-year-olds today in Ireland, not many of them have much prospect of buying a house. So maybe they buy tofu instead. Well, but maybe that frees them up to do more about some of their attitudes. I don't know.
But
well, I don't think so, because I can't afford a house and I'm not being like, I'll just eat less meat now because I've got all this extra money that I'm not spending on my mortgage. That's not what my vibe is, Anna.
Okay, you're right, Ciara.
So Dara, the point you're getting at is like, are these people still going to, want to keep up the right actions in a few years when they hit the reality of life in Ireland?
And like, I think that's where government should maybe be focusing, is like, okay, these people want to do this. How can we help them to do
facilitate
this?
it?
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we move on to our not climate story for this week? And after a couple of weeks of me trying to get it on the agenda and being overruled, we're going to talk about the World Cup.
Oh, yay.
And how it's...
So we're going to talk about Argentina getting through, and
Yeah, well, I'm trying not to watch the World Cup, and Argentina are the one thing that if it looks like Messi is going to go on and win it, it's going to draw me in. It's the one.
You're trying not to watch it in protest?
Like, not overly consciously, but it kind of started without me sort of realizing, and then, it's very, very different to all the other World Cups, I think, in terms of the lead up to it, especially. And I don't know, it's kind of passing me by. Not that it's just sort of passing me by.
I feel like the World Cup is like the baked in carbon that's already in the atmosphere. It's an enormous lump of bad, but then that doesn't stop you enjoying some nice weather as well. What in parallel, it's my kind of mental thing for warm November. Well, that's old carbon. So the best I can do is not turn on the heating and enjoy the nice.
So it's really shit. So I might as well enjoy it. Yeah.
You can be pissed off twice or once.
Very true.
And then good things. Against the enormous backdrop of $250 billion spent on it, the dodgy way in which it was, bought, the way the people are being treated, and how it may actually set back LGBT rights, because sometimes a clumsy focus on an issue is worse than no focus. So that's all baked in.
Yeah,
it's done, and the telly is still on. The games are on now, and good things come out of those games, like a raft of people in the Middle East going to games who just wouldn't have been to a World Cup before. Do you know what I mean? Like there's certain countries that never supported their team in numbers at World Cups, because culturally the country they would have been visiting is just completely different. Like if you're Tunisian or Saudi Arabian or a number of countries, you simply would not have gone to a World Cup. I'm not saying that there's Saudi Arabian plumbers going to this. It's all very wealthy people probably, but there are some cultural links and maybe some lovely moments at the end of the USA-Iran match. So what I'm saying is, fundamentally, shouldn't have been held in Qatar. FIFA is corrupt as hell, waste huge splurge of money, 6,000 people, losing their lives in the building of it. And then that's at the basic, most important level. But then while it's on, there are some things that happen that are nice. And I don't know, we do that with a lot of things in our lives. Yeah. I mean, some good thing might come out of it, that Qatari LGBT activists have some new connections in other countries that give them some support. Not campaign, like do you know what I mean? Like it's such a minuscule thing in comparison to the enormity of what's going on. But I'm just a huge believer in connections that get made in good faith sometimes outlast the bad situation in which they were forged.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it.
The optimism in this podcast.
Yeah, no, it's weird.
I know it's too much for me.
I don't know what's going on.
Am I in the right place?
Okay, don't worry, Ciara. Here comes the stats. So
this is a very subtle psyops by the fossil fuel industry, in whose pocket I am.
That explains it. Did you get the 10 million like Beckham did? It's like
far more slower trickle than that.
But so I suppose one big climate issue with the Qatar World Cup is most of the stadiums were built purposely for the World Cup. So that gives it a way, way, way higher carbon footprint than if it had been held in England, where the stadiums were already built. On top of that, then, what are the stadiums even going to be used for afterwards? Like, I don't know if there's much legacy planning or anything. It's predicted to have, the whole World Cup's predicted to have a carbon footprint of 3.6 million tons. And the BBC article that I'm getting that from last year said Montenegro, Iceland and the Democratic Republic of the Congo all produced fewer than 3 million tons of CO2 in the year 2018. And this World Cup's more than that. The DRC has a population of over 90 million. So that is.
So that figure relates to those countries combined.
No, individually.
Oh, but still,
Ireland is 56 million or
56
something.
million, yeah. So it's
I think 3 point something million is like the entire sequestration plan for the peatlands.
Yeah.
Re-wetting or something.
But also don't forget why Qatar has the money to do all that.
And not only that, I mean, I watched that FIFA documentary on Netflix. So obviously Qatar have all the money from oil, but the FIFA documentary on Netflix, like they signed a gas deal with Thailand shortly before the World Cup vote. They announced, Qatar Airways announced new flight routes from France to Qatar just before that. It was all these high-level trade deals of fossil fuel intensive industry actually was what won them the World Cup. Yep. So it's, it's so linked.
And then just this week, Germany, it's announced that Germany has agreed a 15-year LNG supply from Qatar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of the connections you're talking about, Colm, I think unfortunately the connections are more around oil and gas and commerce
The
than
fossil
anything
fuel
else.
guiles are
Now,
flipping
Ciara,
everywhere.
are you happy that we've brought down
peace
the level
has
of
been restored to
positivity?
the podcast. These are the people I know.
I'd like to think it's one of those things that people wouldn't let happen again. You know, I think it's peak.
I think Saudi Arabia will be the next. Saudi Arabia in 2030 will host it. I think Ronaldo's purported move to Saudi Arabian club for 200 million a year is sort of a stalking horse. I think
if I'd like to think there'd be a big grassroots movement in response to it, because that's what I think Jurgen Klopp, who says lots of great things, when he was questioned about the World Cup a month or two ago, he said, "Yeah, it shouldn't be happening," and we knew this when they got it. When it was announced they got the World Cup, whenever it was, 10 years ago, and that's when the journalists should have been asking questions. He's like, yeah, it's on me, I didn't do enough at the time, but you didn't do enough at the time either. And all these, everyone, myself included, who've been talking out about the World Cup, if it does happen again, people do need to take a stand, so that's hopefully that's my...
Well, the only way to take a stand is if countries refuse to go,
which they won't.
Absolutely.
And the problem with FIFA is that in any given time, FIFA hierarchy would be sure enough of the votes.
Yeah, that's
having
true.
bought votes of up to 50 countries. So there's just a small number of very corrupt people, allegedly, have very huge power in terms of being head of their football federation.
Yeah.
Not that we'd ever get into that situation
here in Ireland,
where there was any whiff of corruption about heads of...
Never.
That's something thankfully we've managed to avoid. I don't know what you're laughing at.
Well, listen, lads, I think there's a match about to start, so we should probably move on.
Let's do it. So just before we go, a quick roundup of the stuff that we didn't get to discuss, and shout out a few things that people can maybe do. From my own point of view, in terms of stuff that we didn't get to shout out, the last week, shortly after we recorded, the European Parliament voted to leave the ECT, the Energy Charter Treaty.
Good news.
Good news. So basically, I think there were investor courts around this, that fossil companies could sue governments if they lost profits based on policy. The European Parliament have voted to leave that. So that's something fossil fuel companies won't be able to do. And then linked to that, a Dutch court just in the last couple of days dismissed a case by two fossil fuel companies, RWE and Uniper, who were trying to get compensation from the government over choosing to ban coal burning, the burning of coal.
You are joking.
And the court dismissed the companies, basically saying, sure, you knew this was coming. The writing was on the wall. That's bad planning on your part.
Yep.
So that's really
great
good news. Really good precedent.
Great work.
Yeah. Anna, any other stories?
Well, one that we'll definitely come back to in more detail is the climate action plan. So our updated climate action plan was due next week, but oops, it's delayed again. So it will be, looks like the 13th of December, but we'll definitely come back to that in more detail. And there's major shifts to be made in almost every sector if we're to hit the sectoral targets in that plan. So will be interesting to see.
Yeah, great. And then from me, I suppose, in terms of what people can do, I really, really recommend this week's episode of Hot Mess by Philip Outer-Hayes, Why Are We Still Flying? Really interesting insight. Like we were saying about young people not knowing about that being a high impact activity, really interesting insight into the aviation industry. And in terms of what people can do, talking about biodiversity, the Birdwatch Ireland Irish Garden Bird Survey starts this week. So that's where you go and look at birds in your garden all through the winter, and you take a little note of what you can see and send it on. It's sort of citizen science at its best. The information that Birdwatch Ireland get is...
I'll be sending them I'll tell them it's sparrows. It's just going to be sparrows.
Everything is a sparrow.
But it's a really, really great initiative that's really valuable to them, and it's a lovely thing to be able to do. And also a shout out to an event that the details the exact location hasn't been finalised, but there's going to be climate community caroling somewhere on the streets of Dublin on the 15th of December. So it's organised by the
lovely.
CHTC project and Full Circle Change, and it's for the climate community to come together in song and celebration of hope for a better future, which just sounds lovely and wholesome. Colm, before you go, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about the book and maybe any shows if you have anything coming up?
Well, shows coming up over this side of Christmas. I'm doing stuff actually, hopefully in DCU in the new year. Thanks for the connect. And I will be in the new year doing a few more shows. I need to put together a few dates for it. At the moment, it's all kind of Christmas parties and stuff that I'm doing to keep the fires burning. Obviously not the fires burning, the panels, solar panels charged. But yeah, the book is my kind of culmination of, and it's not even a culmination, it's an update on where I'm at as being an Egypt who suffers from a little knowledge is a dangerous thing kind of syndrome, where you hear about lots of things threatening to overwhelm the brain with how to be an individual in a large system and how to do a bit and care a bit and give a shit, really. And doing that hopefully by being funny, and like everything, like any comedy or humor about a serious thing, it's not about the serious, it's not trivializing the seriousness of any situation. It's more there's humor to be had in our reactions to it and identifying with others who feel the same. I tried that and it didn't work, so I'm never going to do anything again, as opposed to I tried that, I learned this, and I'll do it slightly different. Not tomorrow, I'm going to take a break, but the day after. You know, that kind of, because I think we just need everybody feeling empowered and confident to try something. I think confidence is a huge part of taking part in any issue, regardless of what side you're on. Like, you never see the fossil fuel industry suffering from a
lack of confidence.
In their message, whereas that bedevils the side of people who want to, reduce consumption or reduce fossil fuel. Like, we're just a lack of confidence in not having the right answer. Therefore, we'll just leave it or wait for somebody else. So this is deliberately a book by somebody who doesn't know much, and it's about the not knowing much, but not letting that stop me, while also not being 40-something man. Decides to write about a topic he knows nothing about. Level of confidence, thankfully, is inbuilt into my genes. But as I say, there's room for everybody.
I thought it was a great read. I think everyone will find something or some part of it they can identify within there. And as the big thing I took away from it was your kind of enjoyment of the journey, and I think that's a message that can really get lost and is really important, that keeps people going with the activism. I highly recommend.
Thank you.
Okay, that is it for this week. Colm, thanks a million for joining us. It's been absolutely great to chat to you this week.
My pleasure.
And Ciara and Anna, it's been lovely to chat to you too.
Thanks, everyone.
It's been lovely chatting with Anna. She's had so much optimism today. She's been reading some sort of book. I'm not sure what it is.
It's okay. It won't last, Ciara. It won't last.
That is it for this week. If you do like the podcast, make sure to share it with a friend, review and subscribe wherever you like. You can find us on Twitter and Mastodon at The Climate Alarm, and on Instagram and Facebook at Climate Alarm Clock. If you want to send us an email, it's climatealarmclock@gmail.com, and OnlyFans, keep an eye out for 2023.
Tara's going to share what he sees on his bird watching.
That's it for this week. Goodbye.
Bye.